Surprise, bitches. I mean, witches. It's your favourite Fausty Witches here today to talk about a very special subject. We are talking about... What are we talking about?
Muggles.
Muggles, aka mundanes, aka boring people that don't practice the magic or nothing. You know? They also live on this planet as well. What they do with their time, I'm not entirely sure, but we do know they pay well. So, today we made an entire episode all about them. Because without mundanes, we wouldn't be asked the questions like, is my man coming back?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, where do you want to jump in and start then, Chris? Do you want to talk about how you identify a muggle, a mundane, what they are, how they differ from the magical folk? We could talk about squibs, couldn't we?
To be fair, we had with the podcast we did earlier today, we were talking about the profane.
The profane.
Agrippa called them the profane.
Yeah. So, before we start, we first got to do the advertising. So, we're launching the Feed a Witch campaign, okay? Which means that what you've got to do is, because Chris is a starving and a hungry, that feisty witch. He's a starving and he's a hungry. So we need you
I don't think I look starving, to be fair.
From the thothwitchcraft.com website. Feed a witch today before one starves. Real life witches, they are an endangered species. You don't understand that. David Attenborough, he only ever goes on about the tigers and the lions and all the dolphins and shit. But witches, actually, Chris, there ain't that many of them about. Not real ones, anyway. Most of them are fake.
No.
So for a genuine real witch, we could all be going extinct. That's why it's important that you feed your pet Fausty witch, Chris. If you buy something from the shop this week, then a Chris will write and send pictures. Much like the animals do when you pay your £2 a month. So if you want a signed picture of Chris, you got to buy something from the thothwitchcraft.com website. Yeah? Okay. thothwitchcraft.com. Go buy something today and feed the Fausty witch. So, Chris.
Irene says as long as the cat's included by the looks of it.
The cat?
They are cute.
Well, I don't know if at checkout, does it allow you to like make a comment or something? Because they could also always write, I'd rather have a picture of Chris's pussy than of him.
Oh, Liam, no.
No? What
it's
if we
8
let
o'clock.
What if we let him pick the pussy?
It's
Do
8
you want
o'clock.
the man pussy
Liam.
or the lead? What? What? You've got two. You've got two.
That's crossing the line. No.
Which one's your favourite? No. That would be crossing a line because that's just nasty. Which one's your favourite pussycat?
I don't have a favourite. I love them equally.
I think you do.
No, I don't.
I think you do. Yeah.
I really don't. You have a favourite. I don't.
I do. Right. So, we're talking about muggles, mundanes, that sort of thing. So, we better first describe what they are. Mundanes are boring, non-magical folk people. So people that don't practice magic, you can often find them in the self-help section in Waterstones. Also, you can watch them generally in front of the television or watching EastEnders and soap operas like A Casualty and other such things. They're the people that don't really do anything. They don't really do anything. But some of them have an interest in magic. They're the sort that come to Fanny Cranach for their Fanny Cranach wisdom readings. Okay? We will be doing a Fanny Cranach wisdom reading today. Okay? So, I don't know if to do it now. Does everyone want us to do a Fanny Cranach wisdom reading now? can do it now, or we can save it to the end. I don't know.
We can save it till the end.
We'll save it to the end. You better remind me then.
So, other than calling them boring folk, which is really not fair,
they are pretty boring. What do you talk to a mundane about? I mean, come on, muggles. What have they got to talk about?
Drinking.
What's the weather like? Sports and shit. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
When we go to the pub, we talk about haunted objects and scaring the local Wiccan covens out of the woods at night, because they shouldn't be in the woods past 9 o'clock at night. They should be at home. So, you know, what do you talk to a mundane about? What's the most interesting conversation you've ever had with a mundane from a magical perspective, Chris?
From a magical perspective?
Yeah.
Probably poppets. They all love talking about poppets.
Poppets?
Because they think they know something. No, poppets.
Poppets.
They know They feel like they know something about it, so
do they all
they
think
try.
It's evil stuff?
They all like to talk about that.
Okay.
So, but it's different for us, though, isn't it? Because obviously Harry Potter paints the picture of this hidden world, don't they? Whereas actually, on face value, there's nothing different going on, is there? Because there's no wand waving and pretty sparks flying out of wands and shit.
I've heard that if you were to go to certain Wiccan circles, there's a lot of a wand waving, possibly some windmilling.
Wow, Liam. We're not having a tiger penis episode again.
Tiger penis. Irene, where's Irene? She's here somewhere. Irene.
Yeah, no.
Irene,
can we stay on topic?
You still
can we stay on topic? So from a magical point of view,
Tokyo, Japan, and she's supposed to be sending the tiger penis, and it still hasn't arrived
yet.
Are you sending it via like freight, like ocean liner? Because I know that takes months, doesn't it? Sometimes. Whereas, you know, we're willing to wait for it, Irene. We can wait. We're very patient. Well, I'm not so much, but Chris is very patient, and he's going to be the one that's going to be having it first. So,
anyway, so yeah, muggles.
Muggles.
So, where do we have the most interaction with muggles?
Psychic
what
fairs.
We would call mundanes. Psychic fairs, I guess.
They're the ones that phone us up and say, have you got any spaces for me to set up my tarot reading business? Oh no, wait a minute. That's not muggles. Muggles are the ones that pay for the tarot reading.
Yeah.
That's it. So the people that pay to go into the psychic readings, they're the muggles. They're the ones that are seeking some magic. They're not the ones that are doing the magic. The ones that are being paid to do the magic are the ones we hope do magic. As it turns out, I think the jury's still out on that one, isn't it?
Yeah. So, professional witchcraft then, Liam?
Professional witchcraft? We haven't talked about muggles. Yeah. Interactions with muggles. You said they all want to know about the poppets. What is it they ask? What do they want to know about poppets?
They all ask questions like, are they the same as voodoo dolls? And then they tell you about how they think they know voodoo dolls work. So, you know, they talk about, you stick pins in them and think bad things happen, that sort of stuff.
See, I always get asked, are you a good witch or a bad witch?
But like they need to ask when they look at you.
I'm a bad witch in the bedroom, and I'm a good witch when out in public.
Clearly not.
Clearly not.
Because all the smut is coming from you, Liam.
I had my aura read yesterday.
Right? Did you?
I did have my aura read at the Tuesday night moot, actually. Yeah, you can ask Lady Poison. And I have a grey aura.
Okay.
I think that says
Did you forget to pay extra for colour?
No, that just says what all you need to know, apparently. There was other people there. So one person had a rose gold aura. Another person had a black and yellow aura. I just had a grey aura. And I'm thinking that there may be something in this aura reading stuff. That's what I'm thinking now after having read that. Because she just knows me so well. I mean, it was a perfect description of my personality. Grey. So where are we going to go from that?
Well, I'm trying not to say 50 Shades of, but that's because I know you too well.
Women use voodoo dolls to gain revenge for a person they don't like. They nail them to trees. Have you ever nailed a voodoo doll to a tree? Or have you ever nailed a person that you don't like to a tree? Have you ever nailed anyone under a tree to a tree?
Only Jesus.
Jesus, you nailed him under a tree, or you nailed him to a tree?
To a tree.
You're Roman.
Yeah.
You can't be upsetting the Jesus now. Come on.
We love Jesus.
We'll have his fan club threatening us again, Chris. I mean,
what, the ones
you're
that sell
going
flip-flops?
too far now. Making the sexual innuendos is okay. Talking about
no, I don't think it is,
Jesus is a bad.
Well, the Jews did it, didn't they?
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, did he even exist?
I thought he was one of these mega magus.
A mega mega?
I thought he was a mega magus. That's how he turns water into wine and shit.
Ah, a magician. They do say Jesus was a magician, didn't they? If he was a magician, he certainly was one hell of a bartender, from what I've heard of the story. But there we go. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I'm not entirely sure what that refers to, Irene. Yes, they did. Oh, yes, that's about nailing Jesus to the cross. That was it. Sorry, the comments.
No, I think it was about the calling Jesus a magus, to be fair.
Oh, right, okay. So mundanes, the magical folk, if we haven't lost all of our viewers already, now we've lost a couple of them.
With all your profanities.
With all my profanities, we can start talking about a magic, because a magic is not for the mundanes, is it, Chris? They're not privy to the magic. We've got to keep it all secret, haven't we?
Oh, you're talking about gatekeeping.
We get accused of telling too much about magic.
Yes.
Because I don't know how many episodes you guys have watched of the Fausty Witches Q&A, but it was one hell of an education. I think you'll agree.
Yeah.
So, mundanes, questions they asked. Normally it's the same thing. So where do these questions that mundanes ask come from? Is it kind of what they see in pop culture? Or is it about, well, actually, I want you to do something for me, but I'm a little bit scared to ask? Because you always get those sorts of people, don't you? You always get the, so is it possible to do such and such? And I think, yes, we can do something nasty to your ex-husband. Am I going to do it? I'm not doing it for free, but it is possible to do. And then inevitably, if how would you go about doing that? How much would it cost and the likes? You know, that kind of thing. So there's people that kind of are kind of interested in magic from the perspective that is fascinating as an interest, much like you go around a museum and you look at the mummies, dead mummies and the like, and you think, oh, that's cool. And then you go about your daily life. So there's people that are kind of intrigued by magic. But then there's also people that want to kind of work out whether it's real and whether they can harness the power of magic, but have never had any experience with it. So the mundanes that are kind of seeking the magic out, which are always quite fun.
Magic.
Mundane seeking.
They are fun. They are fun. They're never ones that want to go pro, though, are they? They tend to be the ones that, at best, semi-professional. You know, the ones that they'll do a few charm bags and they'll, do a couple of candle spells, but they don't want to meet no deities or nothing. Like, there is no. I think they call them Wiccans.
No, because the Wiccans meet the deities because they leave offerings to them and such. Now, on the subject of squibs, what's a squib? Because Muggle comes from the Harry Potter books done at J.K. Rowling, and she's talking about non-magical folk. But there's also this idea in Harry Potter about a squibs. So squibs are kind of like almost magical folk. They can do a little bit, but they can't really do anything worthwhile. And Chris often likens them to Wiccans, don't you? Why is that?
No, squibs are magical folk that can't do magic.
Yeah. So they're kind of not
Yeah.
that great, aren't they? They can't do the spells and that. They can see
But
the
that comes,
spirits, but they can't do the spells.
but that comes from the idea of magical blood, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In Harry Potter,
In
this
Harry
idea
Potter.
that there is, magic is in the bloodline. So yeah, squibs for that are people that do have magic but can't perform it. I thought they were more armchair magicians, aren't they?
No, because
They have all the
magicians
know-how but
don't.
can't actually do it.
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I've often likened squibs to psychics because psychics kind of see things, but they don't fucking do anything with it. You know, they're like, oh, there's a
because they don't
spirit
perform
there.
magic.
I can kind of try and do something about it, but at the end of the day, it's much of a muchness. Because in the squibs in the Harry Potter world, she can see the Dementors there, but she can't actually get rid of them. So, I'm kind of thinking, well, actually, if we think about a lot of the psychics we meet, they see and sense and feel, but they don't work with, they don't do. There's a lack of doing. So I think
they just don't practice, do they?
Yeah, I don't.
So it's one of those where you kind of like you wouldn't have a psychic in the ancient world that didn't have some kind of magical training. So whereas today we have this separation, don't we, of church and state, that kind of psychics are over this side, witches are over that side. Psychics are nice and safe because they're not doing anything with the devil, and obviously witches aren't safe because they're the ones that do everything with the devil. Remember that pact we signed?
If they're those sorts of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, they are baddie ones, and if they're traditional witches, they might play about with the old folk devil. But I don't really work with the devil. I can't say I've ever worked with the devil. Devil's quite a new concept to me. Devil's quite a new thing. I can't remember when he was invented, but we do have a question. Is there such a thing as real magic? And not talking about magic tricks and the like. So, in terms of what we'd class as magic, it's a difficult one, isn't it? You're essentially talking about they say about creating change in the universe and
causing change.
Yeah, I don't think there's much need to create basic definitions of magic, because when you say magic to a child, they automatically know what you mean. Things that are seemingly impossible or that the mundane world isn't used to. So levitation and casting the spells and even like magical creatures,
disappearing,
like dragons and the like, that sort of thing. They think, well, that's not a thing. That's all magic. So I don't think you necessarily need to know the definition of magic, because we all kind of roughly have an idea of what magic is. It's just where the barrier is as to what is real and what is possible within that kind of magic world and what isn't. So that's an interesting one, because that's the sort of questions I thought the mundanes would ask witches, but they don't really seem to ask that. It's normally a case of, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
It's all about the me
I can't.
Of these mundanes.
I can't think of a time I've ever met a mundane that kind of just went, prove me magic works. Like, you don't get those ones. You get the ones that are not fully convinced. I suppose if you were Christian, you'd call them agnostics. The ones that aren't quite sure. They believe, but they've not really experienced. So, they're not devout followers. I think the devout followers all end up in the Wiccan pile, really, of kind of they go straight to it and start practicing from a spiritual point of view, kind of a new age approach of watching the seasons and trying to kind of re-engage with nature. Like, it starts from that end, and then they might dabble in witchcraft if they experience enough.
But Chris, I was told by a high-ranking Wiccan priest and a high-ranking Wiccan priestess that Wicca is the only real witchcraft. Before Wicca, there was no
Yeah.
such thing as witchcraft. If you're not doing Wicca, you're not actually doing witchcraft, because Wicca is a mystery cult, and that is what witchcraft is. You can't be doing the witchcraft if you're not Wiccan. And you're not an initiate. Do you agree with that? Because I think it's shit.
Well, there you go. There you go. I've just not been performing ever. Like
No.
that's all in my head.
But it is interesting.
I should give all that money back for all that work I've done.
Your definition of witchcraft isn't what a lot of people would go for, because your definition of witchcraft, you see it more like a modern word for magic, I suppose, don't you? Magical practitioner. Whereas a lot of people would say, no, it's definitely got to be European, and a European practice that's been going on for X amount of time. And I kind of think, I go more by the word. I go more by the person that's using the word than my definition of the word, if that makes sense. So I listen out for, if the word comes up, why is that person using it? And if someone was to ask me about what I do in that, if they're the person, if that person understands the word witch, then I would use that word. You know, if they didn't, I would probably use a different word, like magical practitioner, because a lot of people, you know, I mean, it's the Fausty Witches Show. Often we get called and market ourselves as professional witches because we get paid essentially to do magic for people and to teach people how to do magic and the like. But it is one of those things, isn't it? We've got quite a few questions and such from our Irene today. I believe in the spiritual world because I see ghosts before I cross them over. I have seen the colour of the candle change to blue and flicker that a spirit created. So she's talking about us seeing the influences of spirits and the like.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
When asking them to perform tricks.
If we have any questions with anything to do with magic, then let us know. Obviously, the subject for tonight is supposed to be mundanes and muggles. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. I mean, when you as a magical practitioner lead a magical life, don't you? Like I do. And sometimes wider society and mundanes kind of struggle to understand what that is, and it can cause somewhat issues, I suppose, with it. You know, I mean, there's talks in the pagan world certainly about rights and so on and so forth. People understanding, like the police or, you know, government and that, understanding people's beliefs and their practices and the like, so that if you're taking your magical items to the woods at night to do a ritual, they're not thinking that you're some sort of psycho killer dressed up in a cape with a dagger, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
I'm using words.
The severed head might be a cutaway.
Yeah, so as long as you stay on the right side of the law in the UK, witchcraft is allowed. It's when you start digging up corpses without a license and the appropriate paperwork that becomes a problem. So, but even so, I mean, navigating what is essentially a mundane world in the West, isn't it? Because it's a little bit different abroad. If you go abroad, the magical practices are very much still, you know, it's still part of the culture. Whereas over here in the UK, it's quite secular kind of culture. You've got a little bit of religion, different religions, whether it be Islam or Christianity, and communities within those, under those umbrellas. But in terms of a magical practice, normally it's seen as religion or atheism, and there's no kind of magic involved, is there? Whereas with witches, it's all about the magic, essentially. So there we go. Why would people sacrifice animals? Chris, any thoughts? I'm presuming we mean from a magical perspective why we would sacrifice animals for magical purposes.
It can be a tricky one because most people we work with wouldn't. I don't think we work with any actually people that use those kind of sacrifices. The word sacrifice is about giving up something, of worth, of value.
Mm.
So traditionally, sacrificing an animal was a huge sacrifice because it was a great percentage of someone's wealth. If you were to give a chicken, that might not be a very big sacrifice, although they're the ones that would provide your eggs, etc., etc. So sacrificing a chicken might be quite a humble handover. Whereas if you were to give your best a prized bull, then you're giving up something that, you know, is a large percentage of your house income. You know, it's the difference between giving a blank check to somebody and throwing them a few coppers, just copper change. So, and that's the difference with sacrifice. Nowadays, you find a new way of making that kind of sacrifice. Mainly, I think it's down to the fact that we don't tend to raise our own animals in that way, and animals that we do raise um, tend to be pets: cats, dogs, turtles, fish. So rather than them being, you know, particularly in the UK, unless you raise chickens for as a hobby kind of thing, or bees for a hobby, they're probably about the only animals that you would farm, quote unquote. So people will find other ways to sacrifice. You know, in Islam culture, it's fasting is the sacrifice offered to their their deities, is the sort, you know, is what you're willing to give up. For me, it might be you know, a pilgrimage kind of walk. The blood, sweat, and tears of that arrangement is the sacrifice as payment. So sacrifice is normally payment for something. Traditionally, it would be to pay to pay for the blessing of a deity. You know, or giving small amounts of offerings to an ancestral altar is part of keeping an arrangement open. So,
when it comes to a sacrifice of animals or people, essentially you're talking about it working on two levels. So it's going to be one or more of those two levels. The first level, what Chris essentially talked about, is that essentially if you're dealing with a spirit, the spirit may want some sacrifice. So it may want you to go out of your way to give it an offering to prove something. It's got to be difficult for you. So with cultures where you're particularly poor and all you have is livestock and the like, then sacrificing one of your chickens means that you have to go without. So if you're talking about Haitian voodoo or something like that, Haitian in Haiti, then it may be, and still is, a lot for someone to give up one of their chickens and essentially let it rot away and give to the spirits. So it's kind of like a payment, the fact that you're going out of your way. Sacrifice, the bigger the sacrifice, the more you're going out of your way, the more powerful it would essentially be seen as. Today, sacrificing a chicken isn't much. Even if you go to Tesco's and buy a free range chicken, that isn't much of a sacrifice. They don't cost much money. We don't rear them ourselves. Also, talking about human sacrifice, people might think, well, humans are worth more than chickens. Therefore, if I sacrifice a human, that's a real big sacrifice. When you're talking about sacrificing slaves, which is a bigger sacrifice? To sacrifice a slave or to sacrifice the king of the castle? Well, it's more of a sacrifice to sacrifice the king, isn't it? Or your best warrior or something like that. So there would be kind of, within cultures and ideas, there would be kind of payment systems of tiers, as in this is low level sacrifice, this is an increase. And depending on what you're wanting the spirit to do, then you would set the appropriate level of sacrifice. And if that didn't work, then obviously cultures in the past would often think, well, I need to go up a tier and up a tier, like that, to appease the gods. There was also the idea of sacrifices in its life, the life force, the life blood, the fact that you are transmuting the energy that is life force into that magical work. So if you're thinking about how you do power a spell, how would you make a powerful spell, then as a battery, the power source behind the spell, people will often think of killing something, as in the life force drains out of that thing into the spell. The life force, you know, becomes the spell, powers the spell essentially.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
And in that way,
sacrifice animals or people anymore. Some people do. Some people do. I'm not going to pretend like they don't. Some witches still sacrifice people. Yes, they do. Unpopular to say that. Not supposed to say that, because all of the pagans and the New Agers and all that say we don't sacrifice people. Well, no, the vast majority of them don't. But there are still one or two people that actually do, and I'm not going to pretend like they don't.
What's an interesting part is when it comes to sacrificing humans, is whether or not how you can counter that balance. So is it you go with something old that's had many years, or are you sacrificing the potential of something youthful in the fact that you are taking so many years from that? So the barter system, when it comes down to that, is very interesting. Sorry, next question, Irene.
So the spirits of the animals, if they're being sacrificed, would they be angry? So a couple of things to think about. If you're using the animal as a power source, then essentially what you're doing is you're killing it and using up its soul to power your spell. So it wouldn't matter if it's angry, it's basically wasting away and being transmuted. It's basically like a battery. So it's not going to be angry for very long. It's going to be used up and discarded like a battery. If you're talking about sacrificing as an offering to a spirit, then yes, the animal could be angry, or it might not be. It depends if it understands even what's happened. I mean, I've met enough dead people, and people are supposed to be smarter. They don't know they're dead. So, you know, some animals, they don't necessarily know what the hell's going on. Also, you have to remember about whether the practitioner cares. Who cares whether they're angry or not? At the end of the day, the practitioner may not care. What's the reason for you not sacrificing animals or people in your magical work, Chris? Why don't you
I find that if you keep the power source alive, it has the battery works for longer. But that's just my particular interest in, if I was to use the power source of a living thing, keeping it alive works better for me than killing it off.
Okay, so and what about offerings and that? Do you really do sacrifice for spirits?
Rarely.
So you wouldn't use that one, so you wouldn't sacrifice something for a spirit?
No. The only kind of sacrifices I would do is normally payment for something I've taken. So, you know, spring water or earth or something I've taken from a place considered sacred. The payment offered is in order to appease, you know, any kind of guardian spirit or, you know, the police of the space, rather than to power a spell, if that makes sense, or power a working. I'm not saying there's not use in it, but
so we got an interesting one from Terry Coops. Alistair Crowley used human sacrifice as in body fluid in condoms. So yeah, so the interesting thing that people would think about, if you say human sacrifice to a mundane, muggle, whatever, they would assume you meant, oh, they're going to kill someone.
Cutting heads off something.
Going back to the idea of sacrificing something, giving up something, then yeah, you could be thinking about cum. Or blood.
Why would you say it like that? Semen.
You said bodily fluids in a condoms.
Yeah, but why do you have to go to the vulgar all the time?
What would you call it? Ejaculant?
No, like semen or sperm or something like that.
Yeah.
Patchy's talking about it. Rather than just make things so vulgar unnecessarily.
I am
anyway,
rather vulgar.
just seem to be on that today.
Isn't it earth, water, and fire? So I'm presuming what you're talking about is in terms of powering spells and the like. Is that what you mean, Irene? You're talking about elements? elemental theory for power and spells. And anyway, I got away with it because Terry says lol. So.
Okay. Well, maybe. But the thing is, you don't need to go there every time. Just your common brizzle.
I would not have brought it up, but Terry said.
No, you already started with the tiger penis 20 minutes ago. So anyway, you missed the earlier comment from Terry as well. She was asked, I think she walked in halfway through this human sacrifice bit that we were talking about. And she asked about whether or not what religion we were talking about. We weren't specifically talking about any particular religion. We were just talking about sacrifice in general. So we were generalizing, Terry. But yeah, interestingly, what we were talking about in terms of short and long life, and what the potential in there of how you consider that to be a sacrifice. Again, that comes into the bodily fluids with the semen. Would be a case of, if you consider that to be, life in stasis, the potential of life, if it was to become a living thing. So yeah, there's that that's kind of the process that's working on. Oh, Lauren's arrived.
Right. Disclaimer then. Liam has a potty mouth tonight, so snowflakes beware.
No, people aren't. No, I'm not. Anyway, move on.
I don't understand what you mean, Chris.
I just think, to me, I still behave like BBC say watershed is 9 o'clock.
I hate to break it.
BBC is 9 o'clock.
This ain't the BBC.
That is a culturally accepted watershed.
Oh, okay.
And we are
before 9 o'clock somewhere.
But you can't control yourself.
It must be 9 o'clock somewhere. If I route this through a VPN and go to like somewhere else where it's 10 o'clock at night, can I say it then?
You're a wanker. That's all I'm saying. Move on.
Hey, I didn't direct the rudeness at you, Chris. I just said it in general. That's just
you are the rudeness.
You've always got to take it too far, haven't you? Right. For beginners, what would you recommend to bring power into spells when they aren't able to raise a lot of energy? Well, you know I'm going to say tiger penis, but Chris, what are you going to say?
I really hate you today. Anyway, yeah, so people, this is, to be fair, this is a common question we get asked, based on the fact that lots of people think about, I'm not enough power-wise, and obviously in the rather useful and never includes expletives magical spell casting course on YouTube at Thoth TV.
I did that.
So you're professional when you do that, aren't you?
I don't know. Do I not swear in it? I normally do.
I don't know.
They don't call me the Gordon Ramsay witchcraft for nothing.
I don't watch you.
Well, you wouldn't, because you already know it all, because you're a super witch, Chris.
Would be the fact that, yes, you would start by seeing how big a spell you can power yourself, and then starting to add ingredients in. So that's where the ingredients part of the kind of power triangle that we often talk about, is that part there is where you're adding the extra ingredients. So that might be dry herbs, that might be fresh herbs, that might be, first unborn child. It really depends on what you feel the spell requires to raise additional energy. Obviously, in traditional folk magic, the raising of energy, and some of the Wiccans with their ice cream cones of power, would be about raising energy with a group. So that is about singing in unison, or dancing, or those sorts of things that raise energy together.
Yeah, so it's a difficult one because essentially you're talking about how would you make a spell work and being assured that the spell will work. And essentially it's talking about fulfilling appropriately the elements of that kind of manifestation triangle that Chris is probably going to explain in a couple of seconds. So you're really talking about an advanced witch or someone with some knowledge should be able to know how much power something's going to take. And if they're doing an ongoing spell, it's almost like a volume switch. If you can't hear what's coming out of the speakers, you turn the volume up until you can. So if you've got an ongoing spell, if it's not having the desired effect, then you may need to increase the power. That's why we like to teach a lot of beginners ongoing spells. So not one hit wonder spells. So the sort of candle magic where you just do one candle and that's it. It will manifest in a couple of days' time. We tend to stay away of things like that with beginners because you're expecting them to do it all right first time, and then they might end up cocking it up. They often do end up cocking it up, and you need to do another spell to fix the problem. Whereas something like a poppet, for example, something that's ongoing that you continue to add energy to, you can get them to progressively put more and more in. At the end of the day, the difference, if we use a mundane example, the difference is if I want to go on a 10-mile hike, I might not be able to walk 10 miles all at once. If you're doing a one-use spell, you've got to do it all at once. If you're doing an ongoing spell, you might do a mile a day for 10 days, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you might add power as and when you've recharged or as and when you pull more in, you see, which is why it's a lot more successful for beginners to do a lot of the ongoing spells. So can you explain you like manifestation triangle and that? Because there may be some people that are watching, listening that
I haven't seen the previous
haven't
ones.
heard it before. Yeah.
Yeah, so we talk about manifestation triangles when planning any kind of spell work. So obviously triangle, three sides to a triangle. The main and what is often the most important one in getting to the goal is the power side. So power is part of that. And then the other two are I kind of call journey because people don't used to be intent. Now I don't feel I can use that word anymore. Of how it gets to the third side of the triangle, which is the focal point, the kind of end focus, the goal, what you want to achieve. So knowing those three parts is how you plan any kind of spell or ritual work. Is knowing can you balance that triangle, like the fire triangle. If you starve it of oxygen, the fire goes out, etc., etc. It works the same way. So that idea is that power. Do you have enough power to go the mile? How convoluted have you made the pathway, the journey, and how hard or how specific is the focal point? So depending on how you dial up the volume on each of those sides, gets you to a final result. And you'll find that when people mess up spells don't work, or spells don't happen the way they want them to happen, it's because of one of those sides of that triangle is unbalanced. So what Lauren's asking about is power. That's one side of those three. They're all just as important as each other to have the nice, perfectly balanced spell crafting.
Yeah, if one of the elements are missing, then it's not going to work. Yeah. And if one of the elements isn't powerful enough, it's not going to work.
Terry's just asked your favourite question.
Where do you place the law of return into spell work?
Depends I returned
whether you consider it to be a law. I don't like the difference between laws and principles and that. It's like in science, you have the idea of a theory, okay? Because what we know about science is every 100 years, everything we think we know gets proven to be wrong. So when it comes to magic, we should be thinking about that. So in terms of a return, you should be factoring that into your spell work. So depending on what you mean by return, you could be thinking about nature abhors a vacuum. So if you're talking about banishing something or an area, then it's got to be filled with something. It's like sweeping leaves off of a path. You sweep the leaves off of the path and then some more come back. They might not be the same leaves. They might be different leaves, but there's nothing stopping anything from coming back. You've not put anything there. If you're talking about law of return in terms of that kind of karma ideas, so you've got the Eastern ideas of karma and you've got the Western ideas of karma, which are all completely different. Which in witchcraft, in traditional witchcraft, there's no such thing as karma, either the Eastern or the modern Western, New Agey kind of concept. Didn't really
doesn't mean we don't believe in cause and effect, but
yeah, there was more like it was
the
cause
idea
and
of
effect, essentially. But then also, if you're talking about return, as in sending spell or energy from a spell back to the person that cast it. So if someone accursed me or hexed me or something, I might take the energy from that spell, take that spell, and throw it back. Like if someone throws a basketball at my head, I might catch it and then throw it back. I could throw it back twice as hard, or I could just throw it away. So if you want to expand a little bit, Terry, on what you're specifically talking about in terms of which area of return you'd like to go down, we'll try and go down that, whatever route that you want to go down, what you're interested most in. Try and work it in a little bit more practically, because most people, Chris, they just don't discuss practical aspects, do they? It's all about theory, I find, with magic.
Yeah.
But that's armchair magicians, isn't it?
Yeah, and often our actual way of approaching those things is just to absorb it. So I will never turn down a free meal. That's why I've got so many chins. It's down to the fact that actually what you do with that energy that comes at you, good or bad, is how you transmute it, or you store it for later use. Take it out for a nice little picnic. So
set it on fire and throw it back. Well, that would be a Lauren thing to do, because if someone sends something to our Lauren, she'd more than likely want to send it back with a little bit of extra. And we got a big one here. What's this? This is a different direction than the conversation went, but still Muggle studies. Can you talk a bit about mundane people heavily involved in religion who are petitioning deities and raising energy and working with contracts? The magical perspective of that and the potential consequences. How might a witch become involved with helping mundanes with problems related to that? Helping mundanes, bit like helping out on the farmyard. You go home stinking of animal. Do you go home stinking of mundane after our day's work at a psychic fair, Chris?
No, I have a catcher for that, remember?
Ah, yes, you got your magical
Muggle.
I thought that was mainly to stop you from picking up the scent of psychics.
Well, that and the Wiccans.
Mundanes too?
Yeah, it stops you picking up the Wiccan smell of patchouli, and then obviously, but the so
You're so bad. You're so nastier than I
am. Contracts. So when to be fair, we get just as many witches that have this problem as well as mundanes, don't we? Really, where they go and have a tattoo done, that they've not looked into the actual, and this isn't the harmful. I went in and hadn't and I've got egg foo young written on the back of my instead of peace and prosperity. We don't mean those kind of ones. We mean the ones where they've put ancient symbols on their body that they don't understand, and then are surprised when their life goes to shit. So they're those sorts of contracts that are always fun to discuss and figure out. You also got that really cool one that I think you talked about on the Patreon, Liam, about the one that went and
don't talk about stuff on the Patreon. That's secret, isn't it? The Thoth Witchcraft Patreon is all the secret knowledge. We can't be having mundanes now about that.
I was paraphrasing. So the ones about kind of where they've gone to accidentally visited shrines of deities or spirits they've never worked with, and then realise actually they unwittingly signed themselves into a contract with that deity. I think Lauren was probably thinking more of kind of things
Scientology,
like, I was thinking more baptism.
cult.
I was thinking more baptism and Catholic Holy Communion, those sorts of things, where you're continuing to repeat a ritual that you don't fully understand, and therefore surprised when there are some niggling left over parts of a contract there.
So let's break this down. Different direction. Can we talk a bit about mundane people heavily revolved in religion who are petitioning deities and raising energy? So if we talk about people that are involved with religion and they're raising energy, so whether that be through prayer or whether that be through dance and singing and the like, they're raising energy and they're generally speaking, ideally, directing that energy to get the attention of a spirit or deity. If you get a bunch of people, say we get a bunch of neo-pagans, and we get them to pray to a goddess, the real Saren, goddess Saren, for example, then they'll end up sending energy in that direction. If you've got some people who are praying to a god or goddess that is real, then it's essentially direction, energy direction flowing towards that thing, that energy current. So it may get their attention, that spirit may want more. And at the same time, if you're dealing with spirits that have a reputation for helping people, then you may find that in exchange for those people sending energy, they may grant the wishes or the prayers of the people. So you think a certain
Coca-Cola and Santa Claus.
Yeah, Coca-Cola and Santa Claus. So next would be working with contracts, the magical perspectives of that and the potential consequences. So with terms of contracts essentially you're talking about agreements. So it's an agreement that is enforceable, that will trigger some sort of clause if you don't keep up your end of the bargain, or if the other thing or person in the agreement or contract doesn't keep up their part of the bargain. So when we're talking about this in religion, we often find agreements and contracts and the like kind of seen in certain very dogmatic religions. So there are some things that are kind of camouflaged, I'd say, as rites of passage, perhaps, that you could say would stipulate a magical contract. So if we take something like Christianity, and you could take the idea of accepting Jesus Christ as your personal savior, you could be considering that as a contract. And if you're fulfilling your end of the contract, you might be all right. If you're
might be Sunday Mass
your end of the contract, you might not be all right. And it depends on what that contract is. So the real problem with this is that within religion, religious framework and the like, if you are basically accidentally signing up to a magical contract, you're unaware of what that contract says. You're unaware of the small print. You don't have to be aware of a contract to be part of it. Everyone in the UK is part of this certain contracts with the government that state emergency services have the right to break down your front door. It's a contract. It's something that you've agreed to by not opting out of. TV license people are the same. The right of what's it called? The right of I don't know. Not the right to invade. The right to come into your house, essentially, those kinds of things. So that's kind of a contract, vesting pacts and the like. Often you're thinking about being part of agreements and contracts that if you don't follow your end of the bargain, something will happen. That contract will be enforced, and you're unaware that you're even in the contract, let alone the terms of it. If you write a contract yourself, you're probably aware of it. However, if you're making a contract with a spirit, and you're not very good at writing contracts, maybe that spirit or other witch or magical practitioner or whatever might find a loophole or might use that contract you've made against you. It's a fascinating subject and a big one that we'd have to do an entire show on.
2 seconds. Martin, yes. Well, this is available later, so you can go back on and see it on Keep On Chatting whenever you like.
Yeah, I think it's on the Keep On Chatting on. Karen puts it on the YouTube,
On YouTube as well.
and on the Facebook page. But what you really need to do, Martin, is go on the Witchcraft Live Facebook group, because there's loads of stuff in there.
Martin's already there. He's a Patreon.
Well, there we go. What's he asking for? You should know all this, Martin. You should know it. It's not Martin from the Patreon, is it? It don't
It's
come
Martin
up
from
for some reason
Patreon.
on the computer. It don't come up with the pictures.
Oh, I can see
It
it.
does on the thing. Yeah, it don't come up on my computer with the pictures. Maybe they're shielding themselves from me.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, so the last bit I think that was on there was how might a witch become involved with helping mundanes with problems related to that? So helping mundanes with problems related to religion, and then helping mundanes with problems related to contracts. So basically the idea is that you're helping a mundane.
Yeah. So often, like Liam was saying, it comes down to who has the power to enforce the contract. At the end of the day, you may have a contract, but it really doesn't matter unless someone is going to come and do it. So your mortgage, the fact is that if you don't pay up, someone is going to come and take your house away. So they're not going to put it on the back of a van, take it away. They're going to move you out of the house. So, you know, they have the legal power to have you removed by another enforcing body. And that's what it comes down to, is does that contract that you have with your ancestors, do they have the power to enforce it? Does said deity have the power to, you know, steal your soul away and take it to a hell dimension because you reneged on their agreement? It's what it comes down to is the contracts that they, you know, whoever the party is doesn't have the power to enforce. So, you know, you've promised, because I may as well lower the tone as Liam's already done it. So, you know, it's Valentine's
what
Day.
I do best.
It's Valentine's Day. You're expected to receive flowers from your beloved. If you don't get them, and they're supposed to come, then you aren't getting any. Like,
no
you know,
snoo.
that is the power of the two parties. That is an unwritten contract. Neither of you ever agreed to it. It is enforced by society itself in this you know, idea of trying to add some kind of pagan relationship with certain parts of the year. But you know, the power to enforce it is the fact that obviously you're not getting any that night. But if you know, beg a little and take flowers the next day, maybe you can renegotiate the contract. So, you know, it comes down to who has the power to actually to make sure that that's enforceable. If they don't, then you don't worry about those, you know, like I don't really worry about the ones about, well, they had a christening but they never had a confirmation and they've never been in a church since. You know, you've only got the concern of whether or not you think said deity or the angels or wherever the enforcement group is for that particular variety of contract is going to drag your ass to hell when you die. So, you know, it's whether or not you feel the need to then, you know, say the Lord's Prayer backwards or whatever other agreements that people try and do nowadays to kind of renege their association that was given by their parents. You know, the question would be, how good is your lawyer? You know, does your mom and dad have the power to offer up your soul to someone else? You know, it comes down to arguments of ownership. But yeah, I won't go on any further because we're almost out of time. Terry's next comment, Liam, or have you got something to say?
Just one thing I put to that, because she talked about helping. So the thing that you need to ask yourself is, are you being asked to help them? Or are you jumping in because you see a potential problem that could end up causing the person to suffer? So if you take mundane examples, if you see a piano being pushed out of a window and someone stood underneath where it's going to fall and crash, would you say to the person, excuse me, mate, you might want to move, there's a piano about to fall on your head? Because that's basically, you're not being asked for the help. It kind of implies that if you were a good person, you would probably say, maybe I'll save this person. So you're getting involved at that point. But if you use the term of, you say to the person, well, that piano is going to fall and crush you in a minute, and they say, fuck off. Get out of here, I don't care. Then what do you do then? You've made
Let
them
it smash
aware.
them.
Do you push them out of the way, or do you let them smash?
Nah, let them smash it.
At the same time, if you're talking about this kind of thing, if you are being helped, or if you are asked to help, it's really about power at the end of the day. It's about your ability. Do you have the ability to push that person out of the way? Maybe you're an 80-year-old woman with Parkinson's and can't even move yourself, let alone push someone out of the way. You don't have the ability to save that person. If you're a witch and you want to break a contract or stop something from enforcing the contract, do you have the power to do it at the end of the day? It's all about power. They like to pretend like the universe is a happy place, but really, it's all about power and what you're able to achieve, what you're able to do. How big a fish are you? If you're a powerful witch, you're a big fish in a small pond, because this world is a small pond compared to what else is out there. That's why we like being here. Because we as big fish in a small pond.
Big fish in a small pond.
And then the last one, that's, Martin joined. Terry says, I think this relates to something we were talking about earlier. So for me, it's the responsibility of the cast, like you say, with the leaves energy changes all the time. You may ask for one thing and manifest, but there's always a payoff.
Yeah, so this comes down to the power triangle again, the manifestation triangle. So where you are likely to have problems with the payoff is whether or not you are able to foresee how much energy is required to pay it, to pay for it. So if you've, like Liam said, that 10K walk, does it need breaking down into 10 1Ks? Or are you able to do it in 2 lots of 5? Like it really is a kind of mathematics problem of, do you have enough energy to make that happen? If you don't, how do you fulfill the deficit? So in terms of the actual, going back to the original question, which was about kind of repercussions, cause and effect, is do you have the power to cause that effect? If you don't, then normally what's going to happen is it won't happen. Or if, like some people do, where they bite off more than they can chew, tying themselves into an energy power source as the energy power source, then they start to have negative things happen to them because they didn't raise enough energy in order to pay off the debt in the first place. So, that's where someone bites, the focal point and the journey are far too big for what they are capable of raising themselves, and then the spell continues to work, drawing energy from you over and over again when you have nothing else to give. So those are the kind of payoffs that you would struggle with, is where you haven't calculated how much power is required and you don't have enough. It really depends on the spell though, because most people when they start off, they start with little spell jars and all that kind of stuff, where those often aren't linking. They're not longer lasting spells. So they are kind of light a fuse and walk away. They are bombs kind of situation. In which case, what will normally happen is if you don't have enough energy, throw out and cause that ripple effect, then it'll just fizzle out. What becomes the problem is when you do longer, bigger spells that require larger amounts of energy in order to manifest, and then the journey starts to go off, or the end result starts to go off, and they start to manifest in ways you weren't prepared for. But that kind of payoff part only becomes a problem if you're then it's petition work. That's where payoffs are a problem. Is down to the fact that when you are asking something else to step in and do the energy, that's where you're going to get repercussions of, well, I did the work, but you haven't paid me effectively. And that's where this comes down to that is, people don't think of petitions as contracts, but they are. Very little contracts, but it is a service contract. I have, passed the service part of this over to you to go and achieve, and I will be paying for it in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So are you going to pay the spirit up front, and then maybe it runs away with the offering? That goetic spirit, it might have run away with that nice succulent steak you put on the George Foreman grill because it wanted 2 steaks and you give him both up front. You should have given one up front and then said, oh, you can have the other steak when you manifest what I want to manifest. So the last important thing, Fanny. Let's see if Fanny has any advice for people. So we got our Fanny credit cards, because I'm not allowed to use this on any other platform apart from the Fausty Witches Show, because the chintzy Fanny credit cards are chintzy, and we is not chintzy witches. But here, surrounded in purple, we are in a chintzy mood tonight, and a psychic mood, because purple is the color of a psychic. So, pick a number between 1 and 3. I'm gonna shuffle the Fanny cards, and we'll see if Fanny has any advice for you. Okay? So Fanny says to the people that have picked number 1, some bitch is gonna saunter in and fuck your life up soon. Oh dear, it's not looking good for the people that picked number 1. Let's look about the people that have picked number 2, shall we? The people that have picked a number 2. Something is coming to an end. I tell you what, who needs a psychic when you've got Fanny credit cards? Something's coming to an end. She doesn't tell you what it is, because most of these half-ass psychics, they won't give you any more information than that, and there's always a summer coming to an end. That's why it's generally right. So the people that pick number 3, what's number 3? This is only the beginning. Chris, I find that quite profound.
That's because you love Fanny.
I do love Fanny. But there we go.
Wow.
Do you want to pick a card just for you, Chris?
Why not? I'll have a number 7 again.
I'll give it a shuffle and I'll see what cards just come up for Chris. Better things are not on the horizon, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, because I've probably got another 10 years of you.
Fanny has spoken. So there we go. I'm not entirely sure what next week's episode is going to be called or even about, but I'm sure we'll think of something fun to amuse ourselves, and maybe you might learn something from it also. But there we go. Over and out. Let's wave as the imaginary credits roll up the screen. Goodbye. If you're tired of all the neo-pagan claptrap that's on the internet and want to see some real witchcraft, please subscribe to the Thoth TV YouTube channel. If you really want to kick things up a notch, try clicking the No Holds Barred podcast link.